Hey everyone, so this is my part 2 of my emotional bypassing video. So if you didn't watch part 1, go do that. Okay, so going back to what I was talking about with the mirroring and allowing people to basically bypass your reality. So what you'll find is that when people send you flattering words or they do flattering actions, but they cannot meet you at the depth you hold, you will feel emotions around it. Usually it's anger. And if you don't process that anger or understand when it's coming where it's coming from, you'll usually follow that with guilt or shame because this person is trying to show you love and you're feeling angry about it. This then leads to behavioral patterns where you hurt yourself, whether that be through, alcohol consumption, drug consumption, self-harm behavior, eating certain things, watching things that are bad. And so part of what you're supposed to see, or we all are supposed to see, is the pattern habit that the anger you're feeling is actually a boundary that's being crossed by this other person. Because anyone that cannot actually meet you at the depth you hold doesn't actually understand you. And you essentially hold a different perception of love than them. And so when you start to realize that your perception of love that you hold inside of yourself is very beautiful and shows that you're very connected with God because you've done deep inner work, you'll start to feel safe in expressing that love. And you'll start to feel more safe of letting people go in your life that cannot give you back in return the same level of depth you hold within you. Because if a relationship is a two-way street, if someone is only taking and they're not giving you back, or they're not asking you questions, they're not curious about what you hold, or they can't meet you, you are feeding energy to them and it is draining your vessel, and your actions will show that negative behavior down the road. This over time is supposed to allow you to unattach to the identity of others in your life. Because if you truly understand that you hold all of consciousness inside of you and everyone is different expressions of that, it is irrelevant what someone's identity is in terms of their relationship to you. Meaning it doesn't matter if they were your mother or father, or sister or brother or cousin or grandparent or friend or coworker. All of that is irrelevant. It is part of the illusion and the distortion to see how are you going to allow people to treat you? Because it doesn't matter what environment you are in. It only matters, are you going to allow people to lower your light and lower your perception of reality? And when you start to feel safe again, meaning your ego, your character starts to feel safe with your inner world, you'll feel safe expressing that. And it takes time to undo this, but the more that you're willing to do the work, the more that you'll catch the patterns quickly, externally, and you'll be able to pause and say, okay, this is why I created this habit. Until you do this inner work, you will continue to attract partners who are emotionally unavailable. You will continue to be in relationships with people that are not built on inner depth trust of what is really happening in this world, and everything that you will create is essentially a form of a distorted view and perception of love that hopefully over time you will see is not the healthiest way to have a real relationship with someone. And this takes, doing the inner work, understanding the patterns within yourself, understanding that people aren't separate from you, understanding they show patterns. And so another way to kind of view it is like, when you get a feeling to act out a negative behavior, God has done a beautiful job of putting mirrors around you of what happens when you act out that behavior. Even though you might not physically always see it on yourself, your behavior is negatively impacting the collective. So for example, if you go choose to eat something bad for your body, right? And you're poisoning your body, there's people all around you who are overweight. And it's essentially by understanding that when you poison yourself, that is energy is going into someone else. It's like what I talked about in my last video. When you're around someone and they start acting out a behavioral pattern, that behavioral pattern will go into you to think, do I want to act this out too? Because nothing is separate from us. So every time we go and feed a behavioral pattern that is hurting our bodies, we have to ask ourselves, why are we choosing to hurt ourselves because this person in our life cannot meet us at the depth we hold? It's insanity, right? And so if you've ever lowered yourself, I hope when you watch this that it's giving you permission inside of yourself to say no more, because every time you choose to align with your depth and you acknowledge that if someone can't naturally meet you there, then they haven't done the inner work to do so, you create space for you to attract other people in that can hold more depth for you, and you will stop attracting people who don't have the emotional capacity, or who may have the emotional capacity, but they haven't done the inner work to be able to hold that. And so they continue to feed behavioral patterns that distort their light, which can in turn confuse your consciousness and still attach you to a survival pattern behavior of the ego. Because the whole goal is to unprogram the ego from thinking that it needs to survive, and understanding that God's always got it, right? God always has the ego's back, and that the ego is always safe, and that the inner realm of death that a person holds inside of them, those entities that are in that realm, because there's more than one, those are your friends. And when you lean into them, you allow space for God to put people in your life that can mirror back those entities in form, which is what creates the mirroring effect of how reality is played out.